Hello, everybody. It's great for me to return to my alma mater. I attended the University of South Carolina for undergrad and law school. Go Cox! My name is Justin Bamberg. I am a state representative here in South Carolina representing District 90. I'm also an attorney, and this past year I had the pleasure and unfortunately having to represent the family of Walter Scott, who was an unarmed man that was shot and killed in North Charleston, South Carolina, while running away from a police officer who has since been charged with murder. But today, I do have the pleasure of introducing to you all someone who knows about those types of situations all too well. With me is Miss Erica Garner, and in July of 2014, her father also became a victim of police brutality. You may remember the phrase, "I can't breathe." Well, that was a phrase that Erica's father, Eric, said numerous times before passing away that fateful day in New York. Since that time, Erica has been protesting, protesting a message of change, a message of hope, a message of peace, and a message that we have problems in this country that have to be talked about, and it's important to have that discussion. So at this time, I ask that you join me in welcoming Miss Erica Garner.
Thank you all. Good afternoon. I am Erica Gardner. Today, as I join as a passionate protester and in the spirit of my father, Eric Garner, who was tragically killed in New York by NYPD on that fateful day, July 17th, 2014, my commitment to continuing his legacy inspired me to join the nationwide movement and to end violence against black people in this country. His death also inspired me to seek out elected officials at every level of government who are committed to reforming our broken system. This is why I am here, and it is why I have decided to endorse Senator Bernie Sanders for President of the United States. Since my endorsement was announced, I have spent 7 days here in South Carolina, sharing Senator's message and ensuring that we create a community where citizens feel protected and not harassed. I believe he is the best candidate that will ensure that this happens. I hope you will remember this passion and his leadership on this important issue when we head to the polls on February 27th. He stood for the people even when it wasn't popular. I also have the honor of introducing this dedicated leader and public servant. Please join me in welcome a fearless public servant that is not afraid to stand against the establishment for the people, the next President of the United States, Bernie Sanders.
Let me begin by thanking all of you for coming out this afternoon. And let me thank Representative Bamberg for his courageous legal efforts for social justice. And let me thank especially Erica Garner, who when one experiences a tragedy of the likes of what the Garner family experienced, you can have maybe two reactions. One, be depressed and talk about what an ugly world we live in. That's one option. The other option is to stand up and fight back and fight for justice for your own kids and for every child and every person in America. And that's what Erica has chosen to do, and I thank her. And I thank her very much for that. Let me begin by mentioning what you already know, and that is that democracy is not a football game. I know here in South Carolina, football is pretty important, right? I got it. Tens of thousands of people come out and they cheer. Democracy is not a spectator sport. Democracy is a sport in which every actively participates. Now, all of you know that your state, South Carolina, and my state, Vermont, have long military histories. And as the former chairman of the Senate Veterans Committee, I have had political process, and many young people certainty that that void will be filled by big money interests and campaign donors and lobbyists in Washington, D.C., who will make decisions that will not necessarily be the best decisions for your lives. So what this campaign is about is talking about a political revolution. Of course, I'm here to ask for your support to become our next president. But I cannot do it alone. No one individual can do it alone. Because the truth is that the powers that be in America, Wall Street, corporate America, the corporate media, wealthy campaign donors, are so powerful, they have so much influence over the economy and political life of this country that no one president can do it alone. The only way we bring about the change that our country needs, the social justice change that Erica Garner was just talking about, the economic change that we need, is when millions of people, black and white and Latino, gay and straight, men and women, people born in America, people who have immigrated to America. When we stand together and we do not allow the Donald Trumps and the others of the world to divide us up, because that's what the game is always about. together in this, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish. And what this campaign is about, and I've been criticized for it, is thinking big, not small. Thinking where we can go as a nation, asking questions that many candidates feel uncomfortable about asking. Asking, how does it happen that in the last 30 years, there has been a massive transfer of wealth from middle-class people and the working class of this country to the top 1/10 of 1%, who in the last 30 years have seen a doubling of the percentage of wealth that they own? How does it happen that in America we have more income and wealth inequality than almost any major country on earth? And how does it happen that in South Carolina and in Vermont, people are working 2 or 3 jobs, trying to cobble together enough income in order to provide for their families and maybe get some health care? Is that really what should be going on in the wealthiest country in the history of the world? Now, there are people who come back there and say, we have a large deficit, you gotta cut. But they forget to tell you that today, the top 1/10 of 1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. They forget to tell you that while your families are working longer hours for lower wages, almost all new income and wealth is going to the top 1%. They forget to tell you that one family in America, the Walton family of Walmart, owns more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people. And I know here in South Carolina, you got a lot of Republican candidates running around. And, they talk about welfare abuse, right? You heard that? Poor people ripping off the welfare system. What a terrible thing it is. I want everybody here to know that the major recipient of welfare in America is the wealthiest family in this country, the Walton family. Do you all know why? Because they pay wages that are so low that many of their workers, and it's not just Walmart, it's McDonald's, it's Burger King, it's all of the fast food industry, they pay wages that are so low that most of the workers, or many of the workers, have to go on food stamps, Medicaid, and subsidized housing in order to survive. And who is paying for that food stamps and Medicaid and subsidized housing? Your families are paying. So what you're seeing is in a rigged economy, an economy controlled by and for the wealthiest families in this country, working families are absolutely subsidizing the wealthiest family in America. So I say, a lot of discussion here about welfare reform. All right, let's have some welfare reform. Let's get the wealthiest family in America, the Walton family, off of welfare. Let's have them start paying their workers a living wage. When we talk about the economy, what are we talking about? We're talking about a rigged economy, which almost all new income and wealth goes to the top 1%, massive levels of income and wealth inequality. And you're also talking about people by the millions who are working hard and going nowhere in a hurry because the wages they receive are not living wages. I was here in South Carolina maybe a year ago, and I talked to some young people, or not so young, who were working in the fast food industry. You know what they were making? $7, $7.25 an hour, $8 an hour, $9 an hour. You can do the arithmetic as well as I can. Multiply $9 an hour by 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. And you know what? You do not have enough money to live on. That's just the fact. $7.25 federal minimum wage is a starvation wage. We have got to raise it to a living wage, $15 an hour over the next few years. we talk about pay equity, I would hope that every man in this room will stand with the women in the fight for pay equity for women in this country. There is no rational economic reason why women are making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. That is just old-fashioned sexism, and together we will change that. Now, when we talk about the economy, it's not just low wages, not just income and wealth inequality, it's about jobs. Now, officially, every month, the government comes out with statistics on unemployment. What you see on the front pages of the paper, they tell you that nationally, unemployment, official unemployment is 5%. Anybody here believe that?
Absolutely not.
There you go. There's a smart guy right there. Because the official statistic does not include people who have given up looking for work and people who are working part-time when they want to work full-time. Adding that together, real unemployment is close to 10%. And now let me tell you something that we never talk about. And one of the fun things about running for president is you can try to force discussion on issues that people prefer to kind of sweep under the rug. And here's one of the issues. It deals with the tragedy of youth unemployment in America today. And here's the truth. I asked some economists to study this issue. Nobody has disputed this. For kids 17 through 20 in America who graduated high school, if the kids are white, real unemployment, 33%. Latino unemployment, 36%. African American youth unemployment, 51%. So take a breath and think about being a young kid, low-income kid. You make it through high school. What do you want to do? You don't know that. You're young. You want to stand up on your own 2 feet. You want to earn some money. You want to become an adult. You want to get out of the house. You want some independence. And yet you're looking around. You're trying to get a job. You can't find a job. Think about what that does to your self-esteem. Think about what that does to who you are as a human being. And then think about something else and connect the dots here. In America today, tragically, deeply tragically, we have more people in jail than any other country on earth. You all know that? We have 2.2 million people in jail. We spend $80 billion a year at the local, state, and federal level locking people up. And if anyone thinks there is not a connection between high youth unemployment and the hopelessness that many young people feel, and the fact that we have so many people in jail, I think you'd be missing the point. And that is why I believe that we should be investing in jobs and education, not jails and incarceration. Not just young people. We have, if real unemployment today is not 5%, but is close to 10%, clear to me that we need a massive federal jobs program. What does that mean? It means that we should be investing and hiring teachers, not firing teachers. It means that we should be creating and building the best child care system in the world, not maintaining a dysfunctional child care system. And it means we should be rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, our roads, bridges, water systems, wastewater plants, rail, airports, levees, dams. They are crumbling. We need trillions of dollars in investment. A $1 trillion investment over 5 years creates 13 million decent paying jobs, and that is what I intend to do. Now, yesterday, I was in Detroit, and I had the honor, and it was a distinct honor, to meet with 7 or 8 individuals from Flint, Michigan. And we met quietly, no TV cameras, and we talked about what's going on in Flint, Michigan. And it would be impossible, and I don't even choose to, discuss with you how horrific the situation is there. It is literally beyond comprehension. And as I listened to these people talk, what kept reverberating in my mind is, am I listening to people who live in the United States of America in the year 2016? And the one point that I would want to make to you is that there are folks who say, well, you know, we just don't have the money to do things like rebuild Flint, Michigan, or make sure that the water that people drink there is clean, and it's not just Flint, it's all over the country. We don't have the money to do that. But I want you to think about this. When it came to going to war in Iraq, a war which I strongly opposed, virtually nobody worried about the cost of that war. We had all the money we needed to go to war in Iraq. When the discussion comes around to giving tax breaks to billionaires, and virtually every Republican candidate wants to give over $250 billion in tax breaks to the wealthiest top 0.2%. No discussion about money, that's fine. That's money going to the rich. But when it comes to rebuilding Flint, Michigan, or other communities that are hard hit around this country, creating the kind of housing and infrastructure and schools and healthcare that our people need, somehow that is just too expensive. So I would remind you that if we can rebuild villages in Iraq and Afghanistan, you know what? We can rebuild Flint, Michigan, and communities all over. When we talk about our country and we talk about democracy, I will do everything that I can to overturn this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. In my view, what democracy is about is one person, one vote, not billionaires buying elections. When you have one family, the Koch brothers, with a few of their billionaire friends, going to spend $900 million in this election cycle. Got that? $900 million to elect candidates to represent the wealthy and the powerful. When you have that one family spending more money than either the Democratic or the Republican parties, that is not democracy. That is oligarchy. And together, we have got to prevent that from taking place. When we talk about democracy, I think all of you understand the enormous struggles that have taken place in this country from way back when. You know, when this country began, and we, kids think, oh, it's always a democracy. Well, you all know that only rich white guys were able to vote. Women didn't have the right to vote. Blacks certainly didn't have the right to vote. They were enslaved. Women didn't have the right to vote. Just rich white guys. And in many ways, the struggle of America is the struggle to expand democracy, to involve more people in the political process, to make it easier for more people to vote and partake of democracy. I find it really, as somebody who has been involved in politics for many years, you know, somebody who has run for office in Vermont and lost elections and won elections. What I will tell you is it has never, ever occurred to me to figure out a way to try to prevent people who might vote against me from voting. Never occurred to me. But I always believed if my ideas could not prevail, if I could not get a majority vote, I'll lose the election, I'll live with that. But it never struck me as being appropriate to say, okay, I know that town over there, they're going to vote against me. How do I make sure it's harder for them to participate? So I say to all of the Republican governors and legislators in this country who are making it harder for people of color, for poor people, for old people, for young people to participate in the political process. What I say to them is if you are afraid of a free and fair election, if you are afraid of democracy, get out of politics and get another job. when we talk about the issues facing, is that my dynamic personality? Electrifying personality? When we talk about what's going on, as I mentioned earlier, my desire for you to think outside of the box. Don't let them frame for you what the choices are. The choices are this or the choices are that. That's not the case. Let me just give you one example. Every sensible human being understands, and there's no debate about this, that for our economy to do well, for you to do well, we need the best educated workforce in the world. That's all. Everybody knows that. We know that education and learning is an inherent part of what being human is about. And yet today, in this country, we have hundreds of thousands of bright, young, qualified people who have done well in high school, but they cannot go to college. Why can't they go to college? Because their families lack the money. So that is, to me, not only unfair to those young people, it is unfair to the future of America. We don't know how many scientists or engineers or doctors or generals or police officers or educators that we have there. But we will never know, because those young people will never be able to exercise all of the intellectual capabilities that they have. Today, in my view, when we think about public education, we can no longer just think about first grade through 12th grade. That was a great development for many, many years. But today, as many of you know, a college degree is the equivalent in many respects to what a high school degree was 50 or 60 years ago. 50 years ago, you had a high school degree, you were in pretty good shape. You go out and get a good job. Not the case today. That is why I believe that we should make public colleges and universities tuition free. Is this a radical idea? No, it really is not a radical. It exists. How much does college tuition in Germany cost? Anyone know? Free. I was speaking to a group last year, and I said, well, you know, in Scandinavia, college is free. And some guy jumps up and he says, no, you're wrong, I'm from Finland. I said, am I wrong? I didn't know that. He said, no, they pay us to go to college. But what sensible policy is about, and just think about it, we want the best educated population in the world, do we not? All right. And then the other part of this equation, which is equally crazy, part of the same deal, is the issue of student debt. How many of you are going to graduate school or are in student debt already? Okay. Now, I have talked to people all over this country. I always ask this question. I've talked to a dentist, woman graduated dental school in Iowa, $400,000 in debt. Young doctor in Burlington, Vermont, $300,000 in debt. You know, a kid who went to college for 2 years in Iowa, left school, $60,000 in debt. So I want you, when you think outside of the box, think education is a good thing. We want to encourage people to get as much education as they believe they need. We should not be punishing people for getting a good education. There are people who have been paying off their student loans for decades. I talked to a guy in Nevada, 55 years of age. He's been paying off his student debt for 25 years. He's more in debt today than he was when he started. That is crazy stuff. You should be encouraged to get all the education you need, not punished for doing that. And that is why I believe we've got legislation in to do this, that will give people who have student debt the ability to refinance that debt at the lowest interest rates they can find. Substantially lower. And what that means when we open up public education, colleges and universities, you know what that means to poor kids all over this country? What it means to kids like my own family, my parents never went to college. it says that if you do your schoolwork, regardless of the income of your family, regardless of the color of your skin, you will be able to get a higher education. That's a pretty revolutionary step forward. All right. Erica Garner was kind enough to introduce me, and I want to say a word or two about a broken criminal justice system. And I want to talk about it within a couple of contexts. Context number one. What theoretically our nation is about is equal justice under the law. That's a pretty profound concept, you know? It says that if you're poor, if you're rich, you know, if you break the law, you're going to pay the price no matter what your income, no matter what your status in society is about. Let me tell you a brief story. Some of you may have read, although it didn't get a whole lot of media attention, about 3 weeks ago or so, Goldman Sachs, one of the large financial institutions on Wall Street, reached a settlement with the United States government to pay $5 billion, $5 billion. And they reached that settlement because Goldman Sachs, one of the financial institutions that helped bring about the financial disaster that occurred in 2008, they were selling subprime mortgage packages which were worthless and defrauded investors and the American people. So they paid a settlement of $5 billion. Now, when we think about criminal justice, think about this. Today in South Carolina, or in Vermont, some kid gets picked up with a small amount of marijuana. That kid will have a police record. And yet, the executives on Wall Street, whose greed and illegal behavior drove this country into the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. Millions of people lost their jobs, their homes, their life savings. Do you know how many executives on Wall Street will have police records? Anyone know? That's right, 0. That is not equal justice under the law. So together, we're going to once again allow people to have faith in our criminal justice system. And that means that if you are rich or whether you're poor, if you break the law, you will be treated equally under our criminal justice system. Now let me speak a little bit more about criminal justice. It is an international embarrassment that we have more people in jail than any other country. We have got to ask ourselves why, and we have got to ask ourselves what we can do about it. And here are some of the things that I think we can do about it. For a start, we are tired, I am tired, of seeing the videos of Erica's dad, and other videos of unarmed people being killed by police officers. Now, I was a mayor of a city for 8 years, and I worked closely with the police department. And in my view, the vast majority of police officers in this country are honest, hardworking, and they have a very difficult job in front of them. But when a police officer breaks the law, like any other public official, that police officer must be held accountable. End of discussion. Now, I think some people, especially young people, they say, you know, it's a terrible thing what I saw on TV and what I saw happen to Erica's dad and happened to so many other people. But it must be a new phenomenon. You know, I don't know what's going on. Why is it happening now? Understand that what's going on now, especially with regard to African Americans, this is not new. It has been going on decade after decade after decade. The only difference is the cell phone video. That's the only difference, because what was going on in the past was never recorded. And the police officer's testimony was accepted as truth. But this video, this cell phone, makes all the difference in the world. So clearly, as a nation, We need criminal justice reform. I know it doesn't seem like a radical idea, but we have got to achieve the day when young black males and women can walk the streets without worrying about being harassed by a police officer. I have talked to African American PhDs who get nervous when they have to drive across the country. It should not be happening in the year 2016. So what we are going to do is, number one, do a lot of training for police departments around our country. We're going to hold police officers accountable. Number two, we all have got to understand that lethal force should be the last response, not the first response. Police officers have got to learn to deal with disturbances, which are not so easy to deal with. Don't suggest they are. But there are ways to deal with them without using lethal force. There are ways to deal with people. We have seen people who are clearly mentally ill. It's happened in my own state of Vermont. This guy has a knife. This guy is, mentally ill. You don't have to kill somebody when they're mentally ill. There are ways of apprehending that person without killing them. What we have got to do is rethink local police departments in terms of making sure that police departments look like the diversity of the communities they are serving. We have got to demilitarize local police departments so they do not look like occupying armies. Our goal is to have police departments that are part of the community, that are trusted by the people in the community, that are there to protect the people in the community, not to act as an oppressive outside force. And we can do that. It's not that radical. And when we talk about reform, what we also have got to deal with is ending mandatory minimum sentencing. We have got to understand that drug addiction and substance abuse is a health issue, not a criminal justice issue. One of the issues that I frankly did not know all that much about and kind of got involved in since I have been running for office deals with marijuana. And here is the truth. Over the last 20, 30 years, millions of Americans have received police records for possession of marijuana. And if you get a police record for possession, it makes it a little bit harder to go out and get a job. Your future employer says, well, tell me about yourself. Ever been arrested? Well, yeah, I was picked up with marijuana. Well, I got somebody else waiting online for the job. Okay? Today, marijuana is listed in the federal government's Controlled Substance Act, a list of harmful drugs. Is listed as a Schedule I drug right next to heroin. That make sense, anybody? No! All right, so what we are going to do, if I have anything to say about it, is take marijuana out of the Controlled Substance Act. Should not be a federal crime. States have the right to legalize marijuana or not. It's a state issue. 4 states have done it. DC has done it. But it should not be, in my view, a federal crime. When we talk about our criminal justice system, what we have also got to understand, and this is really quite incredible, is that many people who have been arrested as felons no longer have the right to vote. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, that's wrong. I mean, people who have done something wrong, broken the law, go to jail, they pay their price. They pay they give back to society. They pay for what they have done. it does not seem right to me to take away their right to participate in democratic society. They've paid their dues. So I think we are gonna end that policy which says that if you are a felon, you should not have the right to vote. I think that that's wrong. I think what also we have got to do is deal with this very high rate of recidivism. And that means that when people are arrested, too often they end up, after being released, getting back into jail again. And that means that we've got to create jobs for those people, give them job training, give them education, and make sure they do not get caught up in the same environment which got them into jail in the first place. So count me in as somebody who, if elected president, will help lead this country in the fight against institutional racism and a broken criminal justice system. We have a lot of work to do in that regard, no question about it, but I think we can accomplish that goal. Okay? A couple of other points I want to make, I'll stop, and if you want to ask some questions, let's do it. In terms of our position in the world, there is only one nation that does not guarantee health care to all people, and that is the United States of America. I happen to believe, and I've always believed, that health care is a right of all people, not just a privilege. And that we have got to move toward a Medicare for all single-payer program. All right, let me conclude by just saying this. Change never comes about easily. Real change never comes from the top on down. Real change, whether it is the rights of working people, civil rights, women's rights, gay rights, whatever it may be, always comes from the bottom on up. It comes when millions of people say that the status quo is no longer acceptable, that racism or sexism or homophobia is just not what this country is about, and people stand up and they say, no, we're not going to tolerate it anymore, and change comes about. And in many ways, over the last number of decades, we have made good progress in becoming a less discriminatory society. But in terms of economics, in terms of income and wealth inequality, in terms of low wages, in terms of millions of people not having health insurance, in terms of millions of our people leaving school deeply in debt, we have a long, long way to go. So this afternoon, I ask you to join with me and help us make a political revolution. Help us not just elect a new president, but help us transform this country and make our great nation the kind of country we all know that we can become. Thank you all very much. Thank you all for being here. We've got time for a few questions. I don't know, do we have a mic? Shannon has a mic? Is that the only mic, Shannon? All right, just run up the aisle, duck underneath there, and if you have a question, raise your hand. I see a couple of folks.
Test.
Okay, right up here. Yes, sir.
Hello, Senator.
Hi.
With the free education plan, when you're raising taxes, what incentivizes colleges to not raise their tuition with this federal money?
Yeah, okay, well, first of all, it's not free college education. What it is, free tuition at public colleges and universities. And within that legislation, that's a good question, there is guidelines to prevent colleges from simply raising tuition higher and higher. That's a very serious problem. I mean, the answer is we are cognizant of that, but the goal here is to say that in America, everybody should have the opportunity to get that higher education, regardless of the income of their families. We're not gonna just give money to colleges to see them raise, raise expenses. Yeah, you got somebody there?
What do you say to the notion that the Wall Street speculation tax will negatively affect the economy and the market volatility?
No, I think it will do it, what we're gonna do is pay for free tuition at public colleges and universities and lower student debt through a tax on Wall Street speculation. I think what most economists will tell you, in fact, it will establish less volatility by lessening speculation. Speculation is not a positive thing, it's ups and downs and ups and downs. And to the degree that we can lessen that, not only do we raise substantial amounts of revenue, but we also lower that kind of volatility. Okay, Shannon, where are you? Okay, question.
Hello, Senator Sanders, big fan. I was wondering if you think it would be a good idea for the students that live out of state, that they go to college, let's say they live in California and they go to school in South Carolina, if the colleges should set up a sort of a voting booth so that they can have their voice heard in.
Well, students, have to make a decision as to where they want to vote. And some will choose to vote in the state in which they are in schools, others will choose to vote in their home state. That is their decision. But this is what I will say, is that we should not discriminate against students. What we're seeing around the country is efforts to make it harder for college students to vote. That is wrong. So we should make it easier for students to vote and participate, whether or not they want to vote in the state in which they are in school or their home state is their decision. Yep.
Hi, Senator Sanders. I did my undergrad at Virginia Tech, so I want to know what are your ideas about gun violence?
Thank you very much. And we're all familiar with the tragedy at Virginia Tech and the tragedy in many other parts of the country. So let me begin by telling you that way back when, in 1988, when I first ran for office, I ran as an independent against a Democrat and a Republican in that election. I lost by 3 points. In that election, one candidate, me, stood up to the gun lobby and said, you know what? I don't think it's a good idea that we should be selling military weapons, military assault weapons designed to kill people very rapidly. That's what he did back in 1988. I lost that election by 3 points. I held that position. I won 2 years later. Throughout my career, I have believed in a strong instant background check, which says, if you want to purchase a weapon, you got to go through an instant background check. If you have a criminal background or if you have mental instability, you are not and you should not get that weapon. Right now, there is a major gun loophole called the gun show loophole that President Obama is attempting to address through executive orders. What the gun show loophole is about is you can legally purchase a gun at a gun show or on the internet, and you don't have, if you're going through a person who's not a licensed gun dealer. We want to eliminate that loophole. We want to deal with right now what we call the straw man. The straw man situation is you walk into a gun store, legally purchase some guns, and you go out and you sell them to criminals. That should be a federal crime. And the other issue that we want to deal with, in my view, is mental health. Let us be honest and acknowledge that we have a mental health crisis in this country. There are many people walking the streets of America today who are suicidal and or homicidal. They need treatment when they need treatment, which is today, not 2 months from today. So we need to revolutionize access to mental health. So, thank you for your question, and count me in as someone who will do everything he can as president to make sure that guns do not fall into the hands of people who don't have them. Erica, do you want to?
Yes, Mr. Sanders, thank you for calling on me.
Yeah. You're a special guest.
I just wanted to ask, can you tell everyone why it's important for the youth and minorities to be involved in this political process?
Yes. Thank you for that. That is the most important question. Look, I know, it's no secret, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am, that if you go, back to your dorms, your classes today, and you talk to your friends, and somebody says, well, what'd you do this afternoon? Well, I went to hear Bernie Sanders speak. Well, who the hell is Bernie Sanders? And why were you wasting your time going to some political meeting? What's the matter with you? Don't you got other things to do with your life? And I want you to look your friends in the eye. And this is, I understand that. Look, I understand that that is what a lot of people your age think. They think politics is nonsense. Maybe they think everybody is a crook or a jerk or worse. Why do you want to get involved? But here's what I think where Erica is coming from. If you do not get involved, if you do not exercise your right to vote, what do you think happens to the issues that you are concerned about? Who hears you? All right, significant number of you raised your hands that you're going to leave school deeply in debt, right? Who cares about you if not you? If you do not make that point to Washington and say, you know what, it's a little bit crazy that I have to go to college and come out of school $60,000 or $100,000 a day. Do anybody in Washington is worried about you? They're not. You got to tell them what's going on, and then you got to take it a step further. You got to say, if you guys do not start listening to my issues, whether it is college debt, whether it is the need to get a decent job, whether it is climate change, whether it is healthcare, whether it is criminal justice, and whether you want to continue living in a country where we have more people in jail than any other. No one is going to pay attention to those issues if you do not forcefully stand up and fight for them. So when your friends tell you, you must be nuts to go to a political meeting, you ask them whether or not they're worried about student debt, whether they're worried about health care, whether they're worried about climate change, whether they're worried about criminal justice, whether they're worried about women's rights, whether they're worried about gay rights. And if they are worried about them, you tell them that you're not the dummies here. They are. They have got to get involved.
Hi, Senator. Thank you for being here today. My question is, do you feel like the United States should step up and take responsibility in leading the global efforts to combat climate change?
Excellent question. All right. Thank you for the question. As I may have mentioned, maybe not, I am a member of the Senate Environmental Committee and the Energy Committee. And I know that there are a lot of Republicans who are running around the state who tell you that climate change is a hoax or that there is nothing that they can do about it. They are wrong. They are wrong big time. Let me tell you something else, because I've talked to a lot of scientists around the world. And what they say is if we don't get our act together, this planet by the end of the century could be 5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than it is today. You know what that means? It means more drought, more floods, more extreme weather disturbances, more acidification of the ocean, more rising sea levels, more international conflict as people fight over limited natural resources. Now, I want to tell you something that others won't tell you. Why is it, do you think, that Republicans in Congress, when we have hearings, and I'm on committees, when we talk about cancer, when we talk about Alzheimer's, when we talk about diabetes, they ask intelligent questions. Why is it, do you think, they are rejecting science right now in terms of climate change? What's the answer? Good. All right, you got it. One word. Because here's the sad truth. The sad truth that is if any Republican candidate stood up today and said, you know, I read the literature, talked to the scientists, climate change is real, serious, we've got to do something about it. On that day, they would lose their funding from the Koch brothers, the fossil fuel industry, ExxonMobil, the coal companies, and all these guys who are more concerned about short-term profits than they are about the future of the planet. That shows you what a corrupt campaign finance system does. All right, maybe just one more question. Yeah.
Hi, Senator Sanders. Do you think that it's important to promote social equality in schools in regions in the South and other areas where there may not be as great of an awareness about racism and gay issues and stuff like that?
Absolutely. Look, as a nation, God, have we struggled with racism from day one. From the abomination of slavery, segregation, denial of the people to vote. I'll tell you a story, and I keep telling it because it just stays in my heart. A lot of people don't know that. Maybe some of you do. I was in Birmingham, Alabama, a month ago. And I went to the church. Are all of you familiar with that church, 16th Street Church, where 4 children were murdered when a bomb exploded there? Well, I didn't know. I certainly knew about that event, and I was at the church and we were reading about it. But I didn't know that on that month, that whole month, there were 14 bombings in Birmingham, Alabama. Do you all know that? 14 bombings in one city in 1 month. What does that mean? It means that that city was essentially controlled by terrorists. By terrorists who were trying to bring fear into the heart of the African American community who was standing up for voting rights and for civil rights. That was going on in America in the 1960s. So we have come a long way. But it is clear to everybody that we still have a long, long way to go. What we must not fall prey to, and let me just say this to you, what history is always about. If I'm on the top, what is the thing, and I have all the money and all the power, what is the thing that I want to prevent happening? What I want to prevent happening is people coming together, all right? I want to see people divided up. Back in the 1950s, a long time ago, the lowest paid white workers in America were in Mississippi. Probably South Carolina wasn't that far behind. Lowest paid white workers, making nothing, making peanuts. What did they have psychologically while they were earning no wages at all? What did they have?
Racism.
They had racism. What does that mean? What did it mean?
They basically don't get the people in power.
Exactly. It meant to say, all right, we don't have any money.
I speak too much, I'm sorry.
All right. He was fast. This is what it meant. What it meant is, yeah, I don't have any money. I can't afford to send my kids to college. I don't have any health care. But you know what? I could drink at that damn water fountain, and that black guy can't. I'm superior. Whoa-wee! That's great. No education, no health care, no decent jobs. I could drink at that water fountain. Those things weren't accidents. Same thing, men oppressing women. Straights versus gays. We divide. Now what you're seeing is people like Donald Trump telling us that Mexicans are rapists, they're criminals, they're drug dealers, that we got to build a wall and keep Muslims from coming into this country. Divide us up. What this campaign is about, and what progress throughout American history has been about, is just the opposite. It is bringing us together, black and white and Latino and Asian American. Remember what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I'm paraphrasing him here, said we judge people not by the color of their skin, not by the country they came from, not by the clothing that they wear, but by their character as human beings. And at the end of the day, you know what? We are all human beings. And we all have the same needs and the same desires. We all love our children, and we love our parents, and we love our families, and we want everybody to do well. Do not let them divide us up. Stand together, think big, and create the nation that we all know we can become. Thanks all very much.
Thank you.
I don't